Don't touch me, Kevin. Those 4 words hit me like a freight train, spoken with such icy contempt that the temperature in our living room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My hand froze midair, inches from my wife's shoulder. For 6 years, I touched that shoulder 1,000 times, in comfort, in passion, in casual passing. Now, suddenly, it was forbidden territory. I didn't yell. I didn't demand answers. I simply nodded, turned around, and walked away without saying a word. That silence would soon become the loudest statement I'd ever made. The guest bedroom felt foreign that night. We'd bought this house together 3 years ago, a stepping stone to our dream home, but I'd never slept in this room. The mattress was too firm, the pillow too soft, and the sheets smelled of disuse and neglect. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me, replaying the moment over and over. The look in her eyes wasn't just annoyance or anger, it was revulsion. My wife was revolted by my touch. The question was why. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. The late nights at work, the new cologne that wasn't mine clinging to her clothes, the way her phone would mysteriously flip face down whenever I entered the room. Classic signs that even a blind man could see. But love has a way of making you willfully blind. Megan and I had spent years planning our dream house. It wasn't just going to be a building, it was going to be our future. 3 bedrooms for the kids we planned to have. A wraparound porch where we'd drink coffee and grow old together. A maple tree in the backyard that would one day hold a tire swing. I'd worked 60-hour weeks at the architecture firm for years, putting away every extra penny. Megan had contributed too, of course, but the lion's share came from my overtime, my bonuses, my sacrifices. The next morning after her cold rejection, I stood in our kitchen, watching her pretend that nothing had happened. She sipped her coffee, scrolled through her phone, and talked about some new kitchen design she wanted for our future home. I was thinking marble for the countertops, she said, not meeting my eyes. Blake says it adds at least 15% to the resale value. Blake, our contractor, the name hung in the air between us. Sounds expensive, I replied evenly. She finally looked up. It's our dream home, Kevin. Don't you think it's worth it? Our dream home. The irony was suffocating. Of course, I said, forcing a smile. Whatever you think is best. Relief washed over her face, and in that moment, I knew. My suspicions crystallized into certainty. That relief wasn't about marble countertops. It was about me not asking questions. About me staying in my lane, being predictable, reliable Kevin, who would keep funding the dream while remaining oblivious to the nightmare unfolding around him. I decided then that I wouldn't confront her, not directly. A confrontation would just give her the opportunity to lie, to gaslight me, to make me doubt what I already knew in my gut. No, I would wait, I would watch, and I would plan. For the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own marriage. I started leaving for work at the usual time, but would park a block away and return on foot, quietly entering through the back door. The first day yielded nothing. The second day, I heard Megan on the phone in our bedroom, laughing in a way she hadn't laughed with me in months. I know, I can't wait either, she was saying, her voice low and intimate. He has no idea. He's too busy with his blueprints and budget spreadsheets to notice anything. I froze in the hallway, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure she'd hear it. God, Blake, the things you say, she continued, giggling like a teenager. Yes, tomorrow. He's got that client dinner. I'll come to your place. I'll bring the updated house plans. I slipped out as quietly as I'd come in, my mind racing. So it was Blake. The contractor we'd hired to build our dream home was now sleeping with my wife, and from the sound of it, helping her plan something behind my back. I started noticing things I'd been too busy or too trusting to see before. How she'd leave the room to take calls. How she'd come home smelling of unfamiliar aftershave. How she'd mention Blake's name with a little too much enthusiasm, a little too often. Blake thinks we should consider expanding the master bathroom, she'd say. Blake found this amazing tile for the backsplash. Blake suggested we could add a hot tub on the deck. Blake. The man was practically living with us already, at least in conversation. At the office, I couldn't focus. My designs suffered. My boss, Jim, pulled me aside after I botched a presentation to an important client. What's going on with you, Parker? This isn't like you. I hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. Marital problems, Jim, nothing I can't handle. He nodded, his expression softening. Been there. Take some time if you need it. Just don't lose this Miller account. They're worth seven figures to us. That night, I called my college buddy Ryan, who'd gone through a nasty divorce 2 years earlier. You need to gather evidence, he advised, his voice grave. Pennsylvania is a no-fault state, but if it comes to dividing assets, especially with this house situation, you'll want proof of her infidelity. What kind of evidence? Text messages, emails, credit card statements, showing hotel charges, photographs if possible, and start documenting everything, dates, times, suspicious behavior. Start a journal. I did. I created a password-protected document on my personal laptop and began recording everything. Megan's late nights, her sudden shopping sprees, the whispered phone calls, the mentions of Blake. I needed definitive proof, though. Not for a divorce court. Ryan was right about Pennsylvania being a no-fault state, but for myself, to silence the small, desperate voice inside me that kept insisting there must be some innocent explanation. The opportunity came when Megan left her laptop open one evening while she took a shower. The familiar ping of an incoming message caught my attention. I hesitated for only a second before crossing the room. The message preview on her screen made my blood run cold. From Blake Donovan, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Your husband's still clueless? I clicked on the message thread, and suddenly 6 years of trust came crashing down around me. The exchanges between them weren't just sexual, they were calculating. They discussed how to convince me to add expensive features to the house, how to ensure my name was on all the loans, how once everything was signed and finalized, she would file for divorce, citing my emotional distance and workaholic tendencies. Blake had it all planned out, how they'd end up living in my dream house, built with my money, while I would be left paying the mortgage on a home I couldn't even visit. I almost feel bad for the guy, Blake had written. Almost. Megan's response, don't. He's so obsessed with this house, he can't see what's happening right in front of him. Trust me, he deserves this. 6 years together, and that's what she thought of me, that I deserved to be robbed of my dream, my money, and my dignity. I quickly took screenshots of the conversation, emailing them to myself before closing the laptop exactly as I'd found it. Then I went to the bathroom door, knocked, and told her I was going for a walk to clear my head. Whatever, she called over the sound of running water. Don't forget we have dinner with the Millers tomorrow night. I walked for hours until my feet ached and the cool night air had dried the tears of rage and betrayal on my face. By the time I returned home, a plan was forming. Megan was already asleep, or pretending to be, when I slipped into the guest room. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. As soon as Megan left for her job at the real estate office, I made 3 calls. The first was to my old college roommate, now a financial advisor. Kevin, long time no hear. How's that dream house coming along? That's actually why I'm calling, Mark. I need to make some changes to my finances, urgently and discreetly. There was a pause. Everything okay, buddy? It will be. Can you fit me in today? 2 hours later, I sat in Mark's office as he outlined my options. Since most of the savings are from your income and you've kept good records, you can legally withdraw your portion. It's not the full amount in the joint account, but it's substantial. We can set up a new account at a different bank entirely. Do it, I said. And Mark, not a word to anyone. He studied my face, then nodded gravely. You got it. But Kevin, whatever's happening, take care of yourself, okay? Don't do anything rash. This is probably the most calculated decision I've ever made, I assured him. My second call was to Patricia Winters, one of the top divorce attorneys in the city. Her office was in a sleek downtown building with views of the river. She was a sharp-featured woman in her 50s with a reputation for being ruthless, but fair. So, she said after I'd laid out my situation, you want to be proactive before she files. Exactly. I have evidence of the affair and their plans. I don't want revenge. I just want what's rightfully mine. Patricia tapped her pen against her legal pad. Smart move. Most people wait until they're served papers, and by then assets have often mysteriously disappeared. She leaned forward. Here's what we'll do. First, secure your finances, which you've already started. Second, document everything. Third, find a place to stay before you make any moves. And finally, we file the moment you are ready. How long will the process take? Uncontested, as little as 3 months. Contested, which I'm assuming this will be when she realizes you're one step ahead, anywhere from 6 months to a year. But with the evidence you have, we're in a strong position. The third call was to take a personal march for Friday, the day we were scheduled to sign the final paperwork and pay the deposit on our dream house. For the next few days, I maintained the facade of normalcy. I kissed Megan goodbye in the mornings. I discussed floor plans in the evenings. I pretended I didn't know that my life was a lie. On Thursday, while Megan was at work, I transferred my share of our savings, just over $230,000, to my new account. I left her contribution untouched. I wasn't trying to steal from her. I just refused to be stolen from. I also packed 2 suitcases with essential belongings and loaded them into the trunk of my car, parked a block away to avoid suspicion. I'd rented a furnished apartment downtown on a month-to-month lease. Nothing fancy, just a place to land while I figured out my next steps. That night, Megan was particularly affectionate, running her fingers through my hair as we watched TV. "Tomorrow's the big day," she said, eyes shining with what I once would have mistaken for excitement about our shared future. "After all this planning, we're finally making our dream come true." I smiled and kissed her forehead. Yes, tomorrow changes everything. Later, as she slept beside me for what would be the last time, I studied her face in the dim light filtering through the curtains. She looked peaceful, beautiful, innocent, the woman I'd fallen in love with. It was hard to reconcile this image with the calculating betrayer I now knew her to be. I fought the urge to wake her, to demand answers, to ask when exactly she'd stopped loving me and started seeing me as an obstacle to overcome. Instead, I silently said goodbye to the life we'd built and the future we'd planned. By this time tomorrow, it would all be ashes. Friday morning, Megan was up early, practically buzzing with nervous energy. "I laid out your blue suit, the one that makes you look like an architect who can afford a house like this," she joked, straightening my tie. "Blake says the builder is really excited about our plans. He's bringing champagne for after the signing." Of course he was. "I'll meet you there," Isha told her. "I have to stop by the office first to pick up those modified bathroom sketches." She beamed at me. "Perfect. I'll go early and make sure everything's ready." I'm sure she would. After she left, I methodically walked through our house one last time. I took nothing else, just my clothes, my personal documents, and a few photographs from before I met Megan. The rest was just stuff, replaceable, unlike trust. I drove to my new apartment, dropped off my belongings, and then went to a coffee shop across town. I ordered an Americano and opened my laptop, keeping one eye on the time. At 2:30 p.m., half an hour after our scheduled meeting with the builder, my phone began to explode with notifications. 6 missed calls from Megan. 3 from a number I didn't recognize but suspected belonged to Blake. Multiple text messages, each more frantic than the last. "Where are you? The builder is waiting. Kevin, this isn't funny. Call me right now." At 3 p.m., I finally answered. "Hello, Megan." "Kevin, where the hell are you? We're all sitting here waiting. The builder, the designer. Blake came to help with the technical questions. Everyone's been waiting for over an hour." I could hear the panic in her voice, the dawning realization that something was very wrong. "I'm not coming, Megan." "What? What do you mean you're not coming?" "Of course you're coming. This is our dream home, our future." "No," I said calmly, "it was my dream, my future, my money, and I've decided to invest it elsewhere." There was a moment of stunned silence. "What are you talking about?" "Kevin, you're scaring me." "You should check our joint account," I suggested. "I think you'll find there's been a significant withdrawal. My contribution, to be precise." Another silence, longer this time. I could almost see her face draining of color as understanding dawned. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I already have." "But the builder, the deposit, everyone is here. That sounds like a problem for you and Blake to solve." Her sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know. "Yes, Megan, I know about Blake. I know about your plans for my house. I know about everything. Kevin, I can explain." "Save it. I'll have divorce papers drawn up next week." "Divorce? Kevin, you can't be serious. This is insane. Where are you? We need to talk about this face to face." "There's nothing to talk about. You and Blake planned to steal my dream and my money. You failed. End of story." "It wasn't like that." Her voice had taken on a desperate edge. "Blake, he manipulated me. He said things, made me believe things." "Like what? That I deserved to be betrayed? That I was too obsessed with the house to notice what was happening? That I was a workaholic who neglected you?" "I saw the messages, Megan. All of them. There was a choking sound on the other end of the line. You went through my private messages? How dare you? I laughed without humor. That's rich. You're planning to rob me blind, and you're outraged about privacy? Goodbye, Megan. Kevin, wait. I hung up before she could finish. What followed was a hurricane of chaos that I watched from a safe distance. Megan called incessantly until I blocked her number. She showed up at my workplace, causing such a scene that security had to escort her out. She sent friends as emissaries, pleading her case. She's a mess, Kevin, said our mutual friend Diane over coffee a week later. She says it was a stupid mistake, that Blake manipulated her. Did she tell you their plan to take the house? I interrupted. Diane looked uncomfortable. She said it was just talk, that she never would have gone through with it. And you believe that? She sighed. I don't know what to believe. I just know she's hurting. So was I replied. The difference is I didn't cause this. Blake predictably vanished from Megan's life the moment it became clear that the dream house was no longer in the cards. Through the grapevine, I heard he'd moved on to another wealthy client, a divorcee with expensive taste and a generous settlement. Through mutual friends, I heard Megan was telling everyone I'd had a mental breakdown, that I'd become controlling and paranoid, that she'd only been seeking comfort from Blake because I had emotionally abandoned her. I said nothing. I let her spin her tales, and I waited. The divorce process began with a summons. Patricia had warned me it wouldn't be easy. She's contesting everything, my attorney told me during our third meeting, claiming that her contributions to the marriage were non-financial but substantial, that she supported your career, maintained the home, planned your social life. She worked full-time, I pointed out. We shared household duties equally. And as for my career, I built that myself with 60-hour weeks. Patricia nodded. We'll make that clear. The good news is, with the evidence of her affair and the plan to defraud you, we're in a strong position. The bad news is she's dragging this out, which means more legal fees. I don't care, I said. I just want this over with. The proceedings were brutal. Megan's attorney painted me as a cold, calculating workaholic who had neglected his wife's emotional needs, driving her into the arms of another man. My attorney countered with evidence of Megan's betrayal, including the damning text messages and emails planning to defraud me. The most difficult day was the deposition. Sitting across from Megan at a long conference table, answering questions under oath about the most intimate details of our marriage. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face drawn. She'd lost weight. Despite everything, a part of me still ached at seeing her in pain. Mr. Parker, her attorney began, would you say you prioritized your career over your marriage? No, I answered calmly. I prioritized our future, including the house we were planning to build. And how many hours per week did you work, on average? Between 50 and 60. That's well above a standard work week, isn't it? It is, because I was saving for our dream home. The same dream home you unilaterally decided not to build? Patricia interjected. Objection. Mischaracterizes the facts. Mr. Parker decided not to participate in fraud. And so it went, hour after grueling hour. During a brief recess, Megan approached me in the hallway. Patricia had stepped away to take a call, and Megan's attorney was nowhere to be seen. Kevin, she said softly, this is ridiculous. We're paying thousands to lawyers when we could just talk. I said nothing, just stared at her impassively. I made a terrible mistake, she continued. The worst mistake of my life. But 6 years together has to count for something. We could start over. Couples therapy, a fresh start. There's nothing to discuss, Megan. You showed me who you really are. I believe you now. It wasn't me. It was a moment of madness, of weakness. The real me is the woman you spent 6 years with, not the person who made those horrible mistakes. Which version of you told Blake I deserve to be robbed blind? Which version planned to divorce me after securing the house? Was that a moment of weakness too? She flinched. I never would have gone through with it. It was just talk, stupid fantasy talk. Save it for the judge. 3 weeks after I walked away, while the divorce was still grinding through the legal system, she sent me an email. It was long, rambling, full of self-justification mixed with desperate apologies. The betrayal, she explained, had started as innocent flirtation, then spiraled out of control. Blake had made her feel desired in ways I hadn't in years. He'd manipulated her, she claimed, with promises and flattery. She'd gotten caught up in a fantasy but had never stopped loving me. I made a terrible mistake, Kevin. The worst mistake of my life. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm begging you to at least talk to me. What we had for 6 years can't just be thrown away. Please, Kevin, I miss you. I miss us. I miss our life. I read it twice, searching for some emotion within myself, anger, vindication, even lingering love. I found none, just emptiness where our marriage used to be. I didn't reply. As the divorce proceedings continued, I threw myself into my work at the architecture firm, earning a promotion that had long been overdue. My boss, Jim, called me into his office one Friday afternoon. Parker, I'm giving you the Wilson project. Full creative control, triple your usual fee. I stared at him in shock. The Wilson project was a multi-million-dollar eco-resort on the coast, the kind of career-making opportunity architects dream about. Why me, I asked. Because you've done the best work of your career these past few months. Ironic, isn't it? Your personal life falls apart and your professional life soars. It was true. Freed from the strain of pretending my marriage was intact, I'd channeled all my energy into my designs. They were bolder, more innovative, more authentic. Thank you, I said simply. I won't let you down. I know you won't. And Kevin, Jim hesitated. I went through something similar. First year after my divorce was hell. Second year was better. Third year I met Elaine. Been together 20 years now. Just saying, it gets better. I found a small apartment downtown and furnished it sparsely but comfortably. No more suburban McMansion with rooms we never used. Just a clean, modern space with everything I needed and nothing I didn't. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. Slowly, I started rebuilding my life. The divorce was finalized 6 months after I walked away. In the end, we settled. She kept the house we'd been living in, I kept my 401k, and the money I'd withdrawn for the dream home. It was a clean break, or as clean as such messy things can be. Patricia shook my hand after the final hearing. You did well. Many clients in your position let emotion drive them to bad decisions. You stayed strategic. I had a good teacher, I replied. She smiled. What will you do now? I thought about it. Design something just for me, I think. A house that's exactly what I want, not a compromise. Sounds like a metaphor for your new life. I suppose it is. Then came the morning I ran into Sarah Carter at the KP shop around the corner from my new place. Sarah had been a client at the firm a year earlier, a brilliant structural engineer with a quick laugh and quicker mind. We'd worked well together then, but I'd been married, and she'd been in a relationship. Now, apparently, we were both single. Kevin Parker, she said, smiling as we both reached for the same blueberry muffin. I almost didn't recognize you without blueprints in your hands. Sarah, I replied, genuinely pleased to see her. How's that community center holding up? Rock solid, thanks to your designs. How's the dream house coming along? Last time we talked, you couldn't stop going on about bay windows and heated floors. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. Plans changed. House isn't happening. Neither is the marriage. Her smile faltered. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. Sometimes demolished foundations make way for better buildings. She laughed. That's the most architect way of saying, I'm better off I've ever heard. We ended up sharing a table, the contested muffins split between us. Conversation flowed easily, professionally at first, then gradually more personal. She'd left her boyfriend 6 months ago when she discovered he'd been hiding a gambling addiction. I told her about Megan and Blake and the house that never was. What I can't understand, Sarah said, is how she thought she'd get away with it. Did she really believe you wouldn't find out eventually? I shrugged. People convince themselves of convenient truths. She saw me as the workaholic architect, too obsessed with floor plans to notice what was happening in my own home. And for too long, she was right. Sarah studied me over her coffee cup. You don't seem as bitter as I would be. Bitterness requires emotional investment. I'm all out of that particular currency where Megan's concerned. So what now? Back to the drawing board? She smiled at her own pun. Actually, yes. I've been sketching some ideas for my own place. Something smaller, more sustainable. A house just for me. Sarah's eyes lit up with professional interest. I'd love to see the plans sometime. Professionally speaking, of course. Of course, I agreed, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. A spark of possibility. We exchanged numbers before parting ways, with vague plans to discuss my new house design over dinner sometime. Walking back to my apartment, I felt lighter somehow. Not healed. I wasn't naive enough to think that would happen quickly, but perhaps healing. 3 days later, Sarah called. Not texted, but called, a rarity in this digital age. So, about those house plans, she said without preamble, I have some thoughts. Already, I haven't shown them to you yet. Professional courtesy. I can't let an architect design a structurally questionable building. It would reflect poorly on all engineers. I laughed. I see. And how do you know my design is structurally questionable? All architects push boundaries. It's in your DNA. Someone has to rein you in. And that someone is you? Obviously. Dinner tonight? I know a place with excellent structural integrity and even better pasta. I found myself smiling. Text me the address. Dinner with Sarah was easy. No pretense, no games. We talked about work, about her latest project, a bridge reconstruction, and about my designs for the Wilson Eco Resort. She was brilliant, challenging my ideas while respecting my vision. After dinner, she insisted on seeing my apartment. I need to know if your personal space reflects your design philosophy, she explained as we walked the 3 blocks from the restaurant. And if it doesn't, then everything I think I know about you is wrong and we'll have to start from scratch. My apartment was minimalist but comfortable. Clean lines, open space, lots of natural light. Sarah walked through it slowly, studying details, running her fingers along the custom bookshelf I'd built. Verdict? I asked as she completed her inspection. Consistent with your professional work. Thoughtful, uncluttered. She turned to face me. But missing something. What's that? Warmth. It's all very cerebral, very controlled. Where's the passion, Kevin? The question caught me off guard. I'm not sure I have much of that left. She stepped closer. I don't believe that for a second. No one designs the way you do without passion. You've just redirected it into safe channels. And that's bad? It's understandable, but temporary, I hope. She glanced at her watch. It's late. I should go. But, Kevin, those house plans? I meant it. I'd like to see them. Maybe this weekend? After she left, I sat on my couch, processing what had just happened. For the first time since discovering Megan's betrayal, I'd connected with someone. Really connected, not just gone through the motions of socializing. It was terrifying and exhilarating. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and I fell into a rhythm. Dinners twice a week, professional collaboration on the Wilson project. She'd been brought in as a consulting engineer. Weekend visits to potential building sites for my house. It wasn't dating exactly, or if it was, neither of us acknowledged it. We were 2 colleagues with common interests who enjoyed each other's company. Nothing more. Until the night of the Wilson project presentation. We'd worked for countless hours preparing, and the clients had loved our vision. The team went out to celebrate, and in the glow of professional triumph, fueled by champagne and adrenaline, Sarah kissed me in the dimly lit corner of the bar. I froze. It had been so long since I'd been kissed with genuine desire. Longer than I'd realized, since Megan's affection had clearly been performance for months before I discovered her betrayal. Sarah pulled back, reading my hesitation. Too soon, she asked, direct as always. I'm not sure, I admitted. I'm still rewiring my circuitry. She nodded, unembarrassed. I can respect that. But Kevin, don't rewire too much. I like your original circuits just fine. 3 days later, as I was leaving work, I spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench outside our building. Megan. She looked thinner, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. She stood when she saw me. Kevin, she said, her voice small. Thank you for not calling security. What do you want, Megan? I kept my distance, hands in my pockets. I needed to see you, to talk to you face to face. I checked my watch. 5 minutes. Relief flooded her features. Thank you. Can we sit? I prefer to stand. She nodded, accepting this small rejection. I know you got my email. I did. And you didn't respond. I had nothing to say. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. I deserve that. I deserve worse, actually. I said nothing, just waited. She'd always hated silence, rushing to fill it with words. Some things hadn't changed. Blake is gone, she said finally. He left town after everything fell apart. That's not surprising. No. She twisted her hands together. The thing is, Kevin, losing the house was painful, but losing you, her voice broke. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. How steady you were, how you always kept your promises. I took that for granted. Yes, you did. Tears filled her eyes. I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I would risk everything we built for something so shallow. Why I would hurt the one person who always supported me. And what insight has therapy provided? That I'm broken in ways I didn't understand. That I sabotage things when they get too real, too permanent. That I was terrified of actually getting everything I thought I wanted. It was a good speech, well delivered, perhaps even sincere. But it changed nothing. I hope therapy helps you, Megan. I really do. Hope flickered across her face. Does that mean there's a chance? I shook my head. No, there isn't. But 6 years, Kevin, 6 years can't just disappear. They didn't disappear. They taught me a valuable lesson about trust, about paying attention, about self-respect. I could earn back your trust. I would spend years proving myself to you if you'd just give me a chance. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but a distant pity. The divorce papers are with your attorney. I've been more than fair with the settlement. I suggest you sign them and move on with your life. I'm moving on with mine. Are you seeing someone? She asked, a flash of the old Megan, possessive, entitled, showing through her contrite exterior. My personal life is no longer your concern. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Please, Kevin, everyone makes mistakes. Ours was a good marriage before I ruined it. We could rebuild. No, Megan, we can't, because I finally see you clearly now, and I deserve better. Her face crumpled. I still love you. But you don't respect me. You never did. Not really. And without respect, love is just a convenient fiction. I checked my watch again. Your 5 minutes are up. Goodbye, Megan. I walked away, her quiet sobs fading behind me. I felt no triumph, no vindication, just the quiet certainty that I was finally building something real, a life on my terms, with foundations too strong to be shaken by betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text as I reached my car. It was from Sarah. Still on for dinner tonight? I've been thinking about those sustainable housing plans of yours. I smiled as I typed my reply. Absolutely. I'm thinking of adding a wraparound porch. I've always wanted one of those. That night over dinner, I told Sarah about my encounter with Megan. How did it feel? She asked, twirling pasta on her fork. Seeing her again? Like looking at a stranger, I admitted. Someone I used to know, but don't anymore. That's healthy, I think. Better than hatred. Hatred would mean I still cared. She set down her fork. And do you? Still care? I considered the question seriously. About the person I thought she was? I mourned her. About the person she actually is? No, that person is a stranger to me. Sarah nodded. I felt the same way after I discovered Michael's gambling. Like I'd been living with an imposter. It's disorienting. How did you get past it? Time, space, building a new reality without them in it. She smiled slightly, and eventually new connections that don't feel like replicas of the old ones. I reached across the table and took her hand. It felt both foreign and familiar, a new experience built on the foundation of our existing connection. I'd like to explore that, I said, when I'm ready. I'm not going anywhere, she replied, squeezing my hand. The structural integrity of this relationship can withstand a measured pace. I laughed. Always the engineer. Always. 6 months later, ground broke on my new house. Not the grand dream home Megan and I had planned, but something uniquely mine. Sustainable materials, passive solar design, built into the landscape rather than imposing upon it. Sarah had indeed reviewed the plans, challenging some elements, improving others. It had become a collaboration, though the house remained decidedly mine. Sarah stood beside me as the excavator dug the first trench for the foundation. It was a cool autumn day, the leaves a riot of red and gold around the clearing. Nervous? She asked. Excited, I corrected. It feels right. The foundation looks solid, she observed with professional approval. I had expert advice. As we watched the beginnings of my new home take shape, Sarah slipped her hand into mine. Our relationship had developed slowly, cautiously, each of us aware of the wounds we carried. Neither of us had stayed overnight at the other's place yet, though we'd come close several times. It wasn't fear exactly, but a mutual respect for the significance of that step. You know, she said, I'm not saying I want to move in or anything, but hypothetically speaking, if someone like me were to spend time in a house like this, they might appreciate a dedicated office space with Eastern light for morning calculations. I smiled. Hypothetically speaking, I could see the value in that. The plans do include a second bedroom that could be converted to an office. Hypothetically convenient. 1 year after breaking ground, I moved into my completed home. It was everything I'd envisioned. Open yet intimate, modern yet warm, a true reflection of who I'd become. The wraparound porch overlooked a small stream. The master bedroom featured a wall of windows facing the forest. And yes, there was a second bedroom with Eastern light that had somehow evolved into a dual-purpose space with a drafting table and an engineer's workstation. Sarah had gradually moved more of her belongings into the house, though she still maintained her own apartment. We were taking things at our own pace, neither of us in a rush to formalize anything. I'd run into Megan once about a year after our divorce was finalized. It was at a mutual friend's wedding, awkward but civil. She'd lost the haunted look she'd had during our last encounter, seemed to have found her footing again. She was there with a date, a quiet, scholarly type who looked nothing like Blake or me. We exchanged brief pleasantries, and I felt nothing but a vague hope that she'd found whatever she was looking for. Sarah noticed the encounter from across the room and joined me after Megan had moved on. Ex-wife? She asked quietly. Yes. And? And nothing. She's part of a different blueprint, one I'm not building from anymore. Sarah linked her arm through mine. Good answer, architect. 2 years to the day after Megan had said those fateful words, "Don't touch me, Kevin." I stood on my porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and gold. The house wasn't as large as the one Megan and I had planned, but it was solid, sustainable, and entirely mine. Well, mostly mine. "Penny for your thoughts, architect," Sarah said, handing me a glass of wine as she joined me at the railing. "Just appreciating the view," I replied, putting my arm around her shoulders and thinking about foundations. She laughed, leaning into me. Always the architect. Some cliches exist for a reason. Inside, dinner was warming in the oven, a recipe Sarah had perfected over the past few months as she'd spent more and more time at my house. That morning, over coffee, she'd casually mentioned the impracticality of paying rent on an apartment she rarely visited. I just as casually suggested she could save money by giving up the apartment entirely. "Are you asking me to move in with you, Parker?" She'd asked, eyebrow raised. "I'm making a practical suggestion about resource allocation," I'd replied, hiding my smile behind my coffee mug. Very romantic. "I could draw up a proper proposal if you prefer. Blueprints, structural analysis, cost-benefit projection." She'd thrown a napkin at me. "You're impossible." Is that a yes? It's a let me think about it. Now, as we stood on the porch watching the sunset, she turned to face me. "I've been thinking," she said, "a dangerous pastime. I've decided that your resource allocation proposal has merit." I turned to look at her. "Is that engineer speak for yes?" She smiled. "It is. But Kevin, I'm not Megan. I won't ever be Megan. I need you to be sure you're not just trying to rebuild what you lost." "I'm not," I said with absolute certainty. "What I lost wasn't real. It was a mirage. This, us, is solid, real, honest." I took her hand, placed it over my heart. "I'm not looking backward, Sarah. Only forward." She studied my face, then nodded. "Good answer." Again. 3 years after that fateful night when my marriage began to unravel, Sarah and I stood in the backyard of our home, officially our home now since she'd moved in completely 6 months earlier. The maple tree we'd planted when the house was finished had taken root, growing stronger each season, much like us. "I've been working on something," I told her, leading her to my office. "Another design?" she asked, curious. "Of sorts." I handed her a small velvet box. "It's a different kind of blueprint." Her eyes widened as she opened it to reveal a simple but elegant engagement ring. "Kevin, I'm not proposing yet," I clarified quickly. "This is more of a preliminary design review." She laughed, that same open, fearless laugh that had first drawn me to her. "Only you would preface a proposal with preliminary design review. I want you to know I've thought this through, carefully, thoroughly." I took a deep breath. What happened with Megan? It's not a wound anymore. It's just a scar, a reminder to build better next time. Sarah touched the ring, but didn't take it out of the box. "And this would be the better build?" "The best one. Because this time I'm building with someone who sees the entire structure, not just the facade. Someone who checks the foundation for integrity before adding a single wall." "That's a lot of responsibility," she said softly. "Being someone's solid ground." "We're each other's," I corrected. "That's the difference." She closed the box but kept it in her hand. "I don't need an answer now," I told her. "Take as long as—" "Yes," she interrupted. "My professional assessment is that this design is sound. All specifications meet or exceed code requirements." I laughed. "Is that engineer speak for yes?" Instead of answering, she kissed me, then pulled back with a mischievous smile. "One condition, though." "Name it." "I get to design the wedding invitations. Your typography choices are questionable at best." "Deal." I agreed, taking the ring from the box and sliding it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. I'd measured while she was sleeping. Later that night, as we lay together planning our future, I thought about how sometimes life's greatest devastations clear the way for something stronger, truer, and more beautiful than what came before. Sometimes you have to lose the house of your dreams to find the home your soul needs. The betrayal had nearly broken me. The aftermath had forced me to rebuild myself from the ground up. But standing there, with the woman who had helped me rediscover trust, in the house I had designed with my own hands, I knew with absolute certainty some demolitions make way for masterpieces.